the war room for UFC 251 Fight Island co-main event, Max Holloway against Alexender Volkanoski. A beautiful rematch from a fantastic first fight. Okay, so we did the previous breakdown. I don't remember exactly what I said, but please go back and have a watch of it and see if I was on the money. And if I wasn't, then obviously we'll plug this one in and hopefully update it. What I want to do on this one, though, is focus on the last fight, because as much as we can go into the analysis of what might happen, or well, Volkanovski's got great ground and pound, and Max Holloway gets better and more accurate and busier as the fight goes on, we didn't necessarily see either of those things from the first fight, and that's kind of what I was expecting. If you look at Max Holloway's stats consistently throughout his career, he starts off with a low success rate and a low work rate in the first round, and as the rounds get better, his success rate gets better and his output gets better. So his fifth round is always better than his first, and it works subsequently as it moves through. And that is because he's learning, his confidence is growing, he's seeing different opportunities. Some techniques that he's been throwing are starting to pay off, so now he can start using them as setups for other techniques. There are lots of complexities to Max Holloway's game, but ultimately it's about him elevating his pace and his effectiveness as the fight goes on. That was something he wasn't allowed to do in the Volkanovski fight. It seemed to me like Volkanovski came into that fight to keep giving him different looks, to stand still sometimes, to move a little bit sometimes, to keep changing his angle, to sometimes be completely out of the way when Max is throwing, to sometimes stand his ground and crack him as hard as he could. It always seemed quite uncomfortable for Max. He never really seemed like he knew how to get into the fight. And, Volkanovski has so many options, especially because of his stature. There are things that he can do very well. He's already pretty much in a level change because he's that much shorter than Max Holloway. So there's always the threat of the takedown there. We know he's got a hell of a drive on him from his rugby days, plowing somebody into the fence and then smashing them up against the fence and beating them up. That is always a string to his bow that Max Holloway's got to consider. The other thing as well is he's very fast. He's got quick feet. So when Max Holloway starts to move forward, he's immediately out and moving laterally before Max has managed to pin him down. And the one other thing as well is he found it so easy to slip off to the side, to get out of the way and to counter as Max was moving in. It's something I've not seen many people do with Max in the past. And I'm not exactly sure why that is, but as Max is moving forward, he's able to dip off to the side and dig a hard low kick, or step off and dig a good inside low kick. They're all things that not only pay dividends throughout the fight because they're adding bruises and they're slowing those muscles down so they're not firing quite as fast. It also stops Max planting on that foot when he's trying to throw with power. It also slows his movement down when he's stepping through. And like I've said before, if you throw a punch at an opponent and it misses, the next time you throw a punch, you're not going to throw it with the same kind of intensity, especially if you throw it hard and it misses and then you're vulnerable after. Something that Max kept finding himself doing. As I watched the fight through again last night, and I just kind of pulled out some points. We're looking at the first round, there was a lot of trading of low kicks, but it was much more of Volkanovski really wasn't that bothered about being impactful in that first round. Everything just seemed to be about interrupting what Max Holloway was doing, just kind of either being there and hurting him or being so far out of the way that Max it's not even worth him continuing on his combination. He was also fighting in bursts as well. And this is generally what Volkanovski does anyway to test people out, because he's so fast and he is powerful when he does land. If he does fight in a burst and then he's calm for a minute or so, that next burst is still going to have a surprise factor to it. So Max was also never able to get a good rhythm of the speed that Volkanovski wanted to fight at. Oftentimes Volkanovski comes and he'll set a pace and he's in front of you and he's moving and he's making you work. That pace constantly kept shifting in this fight. 1 minute he's in your face, he's moving around, he's cutting angles in front of you. Then he's out and he's moving laterally. Then he's standing still and he's doing a lot of the city kickboxing, kind of shifting weight from one side to the next to see what's coming. All things that are quite unnerving, but things that are, instead of Max Holloway thinking about his game plan and what do I do better the next round and how do I land more and throw more, he's now thinking, well, how do I land? How do I stop taking these low kicks when I'm throwing? There were so many other narratives that were put in his brain while the fight was going on that he doesn't normally have to think about because he generally dominates. What else? As we move into the second round, we were starting to see bruising on the legs of Max Holloway, and then that's going to start affecting the stances that he wants to stand in. Something else that Max needs to be considering as well, because he does have a long stance. There are benefits and drawbacks to having a long stance. Obviously, the reason that Max Holloway needs to utilize a long stance against someone like Volkanovski is because he has a reach disadvantage. So he needs to make up for that lack of reach with his feet. He needs to take his feet with him. But at the same time, the long stance that allows that decent movement also makes you vulnerable to low kicks. You can't check a kick quite as easy when you've got a long stance. That's why Thai boxers stand short with their weight on their back leg so they can pick that lead leg up if they want. Again, there was never a comfortable stance. There was never a comfortable position for Max Holloway to really work from. If I look at the stats, so this is where it gets interesting for me, when I start really looking at the stats. Now, Max Holloway defended every takedown. There was a takedown attempt in the first, one in the fourth, and two in the fifth. The takedown attempt in the first, and I would argue this for majority of them as well, that he wasn't really trying to take him down. Again, it was just giving him a different look. It was giving him something else to think about aside from, is he going to be there, is he not, is he going to hit me, is he going to move, is he going to low kick me? Again, constant different narratives being thrown at Max Holloway, so new things to think about all the time, taking him out of his own game plan and fixing him firmly in what Volkanovski wants to do, so he's then just being reactive. There was one thing that Max Holloway did really well, and I believe it was in the fourth round. Where's my note? I believe it was in the fourth round because, and I don't know why Max Holloway didn't use this at other times, but there was a clean knee to the midsection, third round. And you can actually even see Volkanovski, he acknowledges it. He goes, yeah, that was a good knee. As he stepped in, there was a knee come straight up the center. This is one thing I don't feel like Holloway used nearly as much as he could have done in that fight. I mean, he doesn't tend to use knees unless he's clamped onto someone. I don't know why that is, but that range knee worked really well because he read the timing of Volkanovski coming in. He stuck that knee right in the midsection and it stopped Volkanovski in his tracks. Now, if I'm one of Holloway's coaches and I'm looking at that fight, I'm going back and reviewing it, that knee is sticking out in my mind. I'm thinking to myself, that is a key to turning this fight around. Because on those rushes where Volkanovski is coming forward, we talk about the benefits of being able to switch stance. The drawback of being able to switch stance is that your shoulders then spend more time square than they do if you're in one stance moving forward and back, okay? Think about this. So I'm in my hands right now, I've got my lead foot forward is my left leg, okay? So as I'm moving forward in my orthodox stance, that keeps my midsection on a sideline. If I'm stepping through stances and switching, there's always going to be a point where my shoulders are square to my opponent. The quicker you move, the more aggressively you move, the less time you spend switching through, the more time you spend taking shorter steps, so the more time your shoulders are square moving forward. I feel very much like that center channel is a direct way that Max Holloway can stop that forward momentum, use that knee, and even start maybe influencing Volkanovski to work for takedowns. The times when Volkanovski worked takedowns in the first fight was relatively easy defended by Max Holloway. Max Holloway's takedown defense is excellent. It's about 83%, I believe. I'll get the stats up in a minute. It's about 83%, something above 80%. One of the reasons why his takedown defense is so good is because he starts off with defending takedowns. He knows full well that he's a striker with takedown defense. But in recent years, he's bolstered that with really, really nice guillotine attacks. And if you watch the way that he snatches that guillotine on Cub Swanson, I felt that choke myself when I watched him snatch it on. It was so fast. And he twists it and steps over and clamps on straight away. Once he feels comfortable that he's defending takedowns, then he's always got that neck attack. And I think if he starts to outpoint Volkanovski on the feet this time, I'm just for argument's sake, let's say Holloway does turn it around and he's able to win the striking exchanges, then he's going to start forcing Volkanovski into a different game plan, which is more predictable. That game plan is defend a takedown or choke him out, and then Holloway's now playing back in his game. But that doesn't even come into the equation until he starts taking control of the striking ranges. And that's where fundamentally he has to do something different. Let me just pull up the stats page just so I can have a look at this. So, it was so close the last fight. Max Holloway they both threw 303 total strikes. 303 significant strikes. Volkanovski landed 23 more than Holloway. It's not much, but it's enough to put a stamp on the judges' scorecards and make sure he's winning those rounds. He also had 4 takedown attempts, and I know they were all defended, but you don't score defense. There's no need to score defense because it's a reward in itself, and that's a Mark Goddard quote, and it's always stuck in my mind. You don't score defensive techniques because the reward for the defense is not getting punched or taken down. Let me just pull up the stats for this matchup. Oh, no. Because we need to identify the height and reach advantage, the height advantage for Max Holloway and the reach disadvantage for Holloway. It's very strange. I mean, he's 5'11" to 5'6", but he has a 69-inch reach disadvantage. There's 2 inches on Volkanovski's reach. I'm not saying that that's going to mean he can hit him easier, but that does mean that he's got a longer wingspan. His shoulders are broader. I find this as a useful thing if you're reaching for techniques, if you're reaching for a double leg, if you're trying to get your fingers together. Like, imagine if you're trying to get a takedown against the fence and you're trying to get your fingers together to complete that double leg. That looks like 2 inches to me. If I can get those fingertips 2 inches closer, then I'm going to get that takedown, those fingertips locked. I think the reach advantage for Volkanovski is much more suited to his grappling skills and his takedowns. Holloway needs to make up for that reach advantage by using his feet, but he can also bear over him a little bit with his height. So it's much of a muchness. I like to think the shorter fighters with longer arms have got a better advantage on the ground and pulling those takedowns in. That's just one thing to consider in this fight. The other thing as well is they've not fought anybody else since. Max Holloway has been the reigning champion for a long, long time. And he will also look at that fight and think to himself, I could have done things better. I wasn't really myself that night. I could have picked up my work rate here. I could have thrown a few more low kicks there. Like, he'll find lots of ways and lots of performances that he's already had which are better. He might even go, you know what, if I'd have just showed up in the same condition I was against Lamas, I'd have won that fight. Like, fighters do this. They'll compare their training camps after a win and a loss, and they'll go, oh, well, I can see the shortcomings in that training camp. And it's not like Holloway was too far behind. He was, 20 strikes behind and a couple of takedown attempts. They're things that he can go back into the gym and go, you know what? I can fix this. I can get an edge on this guy. And he's got a full 25 minutes research that he can start the next fight with. And if you look at the way Max Holloway fights, the first round is study, the second round is test, and then he goes 3, 4th, and 5th. I'm going to beat the shit out of you as much as I can. That's his game plan. But if he doesn't get those 2 first rounds to get started, the next 3 rounds don't come into play.